Good evening. This is another episode of our podcast, inspirED. I'm Sarah Loudon from Total Health Conferencing, and I have the honor tonight to be with some powerful patients that will be sharing their stories, each who have faced a diagnosis of cancer, each who have participated in past advocacy events with Total Health Conferencing, and each who had stories that really resonated both with me and with our listening audience. So we decided that in honor of Survivorship Month, that we would invite these patients back, these people back, to be able to share more of their story and expand on who they are, a little bit about their journey through cancer, and then a lot about life after cancer. So I'd like to just welcome each and every one of you. I'm going to call you all by first names. Part of the podcast and the presentation will be to give everyone any of the information that's shareable. So, and likewise, please call me by my first name. It's really meant to be a conversation among us so that we can get to know each other better. So I'm joined tonight with Meredith, Salima, Chaz, Randy, and Karen. And I'm again so happy to have you all back, because what we've done in the past, I really felt like left off with a lot of unanswered questions. And so I'd love to fill in some of those blanks. So I'd like to start with going around the room and just letting our audience know who we are talking to by asking you to share just a minute or two about who you are, what you do in life, and then maybe who you're sharing your four walls with during COVID-19. So Meredith, I'll start with you.
Hi, yeah, I'm Meredith. I am, in my daytime life, I'm a therapist. I actually went to school for art therapy, and then I try to do some of that, but I also do a lot of the talk therapy. And right now, actually, it's just me here at my house during this time, but I am surrounded by fantastic neighbors, and I have a cat, so we're good.
Wonderful. Salima?
Hi, Sarah. Nice to see you again.
You too.
My name's Salima Witt. What am I? Surrounded by crazy people. No, I'm kidding. Two teenage daughters during COVID. My husband, I'm a primate keeper. I've been a primate keeper for 20 years. But now, the last few years, especially after cancer, I've kind of stopped working, and I'm spending time on me, and I've been able to, focus on the things that I need to do. So that's what I've done. That's my primate keeper.
Wonderful. How unique. We'll definitely have to come back to that. Chaz, the big and bold personality, Chaz.
What are you talking about? So this has been a crazy week for us. So my name is Chaz Rodgers. I was diagnosed in 2013 with borderline stage 4 prostate cancer. We relocated to the San Diego area about 7 years ago with 3 kids that were not quite teenagers yet, and now I have 3 teenagers. Yes, I still have my hair, nothing's gray yet, and I do not color, but I'm getting close. And their mom is here, and she works in the healthcare market, and they have obviously been going crazy because of everything that's going on with COVID-19. So it's been a heck of a journey. I've been through 2 different healthcare networks from my diagnosis to present day, and we'll get into that more later. So happy to be here. I am 100% happy to be alive, and learned quite a bit on this journey. So thanks for having us.
Wonderful. Thank you, Chaz. Karen, I'll go to you next.
Okay, I'm Karen Wehling. I was diagnosed with stage 4 colorectal cancer 9 years ago, and that was 4 months after my husband suddenly died from head and neck cancer. So it's been quite a change, and I was a physical therapist before my diagnosis. Now I do a lot of volunteering for cancer-related activities. I'm a patient advocate, a research advocate, and I have a small job doing IRB work, looking at research. I live here now with my daughter, her husband, and my 2 granddaughters. And I'm really happy that there's somebody in the house besides just me.
Yes, yes. Wow, interesting. I love that change from physical therapy. We'll definitely get into to all of that. And last but not least, Randy, give us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you. I'm glad you always like to save the best for last. Yes, in 2008, in March of 2008, I awakened one morning coughing up blood, and within 7 days found out I had stage 3 non-small cell lung cancer. I was running a small business at the time, a high-end marketing services company, and Microsoft was my biggest client. We had a staff of about 15 people, and I had 2 teenage kids at home. And following my surgery, the surgeon deemed my surgery was inoperable while he was cutting me open, and told me I had about a year to live. So needless to say, he was incorrect, but that had a pretty big impact on how I was going to move forward with my life. So I sold my business and took my kids out of school and traveled around and just hung out. And then one day, all of a sudden realized, gee, you're going to live a little bit longer. And I started getting into the world of cancer advocacy. And so that's really what I've been doing since. And I live in the Seattle area, greater Seattle area, and I have a significant other who is fabulous and takes very good care of me. I spend, when I'm not doing advocacy work, she has a 1.2 acre beautiful piece of real estate here in the great Northwest. And so I'm busy trimming and shaping and keeping this yard in good shape.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. The power of being outdoors, I think, is so underrated.
It's really been helpful during this incredibly weird time. That's for
Yes,
sure.
sometimes I'll find myself, I'm working all day and I feel like I'm working harder. I don't know if the rest of you feel like this, but I feel like I'm working harder than I've ever worked before. And I'll go outside. I have a 6-year-old and a 16-year-old, so I'll go outside for something. They're in the pool or something. And I'm in Florida, so as soon as the sun hits me, it's like, why am I not out here? Like, why am I not out here? It just feels like there's the spiritual draw that says this is where you're supposed to be, not behind lights and, laptops and all these things. So yeah, I envy that, Randy, that you've got that beautiful opportunity to be outside so much.
It's been very therapeutic.
Yes. So, okay. Well, now that we know who we're talking to, this is Survivorship Day, I think, was last Sunday, and this is kind of part of a survivorship period of time. And I always, I think about all of the people. There are millions and millions of people that have lived through cancer. And now they're kind of creating their own new normal. So even when we try to correlate that back to COVID-19, where all of these people were figuring out what's next, everyone on this call had to figure out what's next way before COVID-19 hit. Meredith, tell me a little about your diagnosis. I know your diagnosis was one of the ones that struck me, probably most significantly. But a little about your diagnosis, and then when you knew that you had to think about that new normal.
Yeah, so back in 2001, I was diagnosed with AML, acute myelogenous leukemia, and I had chemotherapy, and then I had a bone marrow transplant, and it was really after the transplant when I knew that I would have to kind of reconfigure and restructure the way that I think about myself and my life, because of not only just with, after a transplant, then you go on all of these, okay, so I had the transplant and then I got graft versus host disease. So I've had that for quite some time. So that's really one of the big moments. And so I had to adjust on how I live with a suppressed immune system.
And Meredith, you were 19 at diagnosis, right?
I was 19. It was a while ago. So,
Yeah, but
I was.
I'm more thinking about it. My son is going to turn 17 in 2 days. I'm just thinking about the headspace of a 19-year-old. You know,
Yeah,
or you thought you had flu or something like that, and
I
you go in.
did. Yeah, I was away at college and I was having a great time and everything. And I thought I had the flu and they were like, oh, maybe you have mono. It's fine. You'll be fine. And then I kept getting sicker and sicker and sicker. And then finally I was very disappointed. I was actually supposed to go on a date and I was really excited about the date. And the doctor who I had been seeing at the clinic at college kept calling me and calling me and calling me. And I was like, I don't have time for this. I'm going on a date. And so then finally I picked up the phone and he said, you have to go to the emergency room because it's not mono, it's not any of that. We think it's leukemia and I don't think you have much time left.
Wow.
So then I went to the ER and then they basically talked about the fact that they believed I just had a few days to live because it's acute and they thought it had progressed so rapidly. So that as a 19-year-old was really kind of shattering in a way. And then at that point, I just started going through the motions. And then it was till after my transplants, and I was in the 100-day time period after the transplant where you're really suppressed and you have to be, you know, kind of like we are now, all the time, and very, very strong about it. And so that's when I really started to try to make adjustments in what my life looked like.
It's so, you know, it's just so incredible, the power of kind of the human spirit, because you're told something that's so foreign and so weird, you know, and you're just like, what? You're thinking about it, you're thinking about a date, what to wear, you know, what you'll say, what your name will look like with his last name after it. And then all of a sudden, you know, you're faced with this life-threatening reality, and you're filtering through that. And it just thinking about, you know, the power of the human spirit to say, okay, what do you go, you really do go into survivor mode, like not survivor in what we're talking about, but survivor in like, I'm fighting for my life now. So that's, your story definitely resonated and stayed with me, but we'll get back to what happened after that. Salima, when you were diagnosed and went through treatment and just kind of got a handle on everything, tell us about that story. And then when you felt like, okay, I'm past that and now I'm getting back into rebuilding the life that I want.
I think that's just been recently for me. I was diagnosed with stage 3 kidney cancer in the summer of 2016 or 2018, sorry, 2 years ago. And for me, you know, from the moment I was diagnosed, 11 days later, I had my left kidney removed. And I was in a world that it was just so alien and foreign to me. I remember it was so surreal at the dinner table after I had found out that I had this, or they thought that it was, you know, before you get the pathology, they thought it was cancerous. And I remember just thinking, this is happening to me. It was the strangest, like out of body. I just want somebody to take this away from me. Just, can somebody do this? Can I not be going through this? It was so frightening for me. And at the time, so yes, now just in the last 6 months have I slowly started to take that. And honestly, because for me, it was almost, I approached it like a job and like a duty that I had to do to take care of that. It was empirical. It's just I had to do everything I could to try to make sure that I would be okay. And that meant change a lot of things. I mean, after the surgery and after, I mean, it was change what I ate, change what I makeup, change things. I wanted to make sure that the things that I was putting on my body, in my body, everything I could do that I could control was controlled. Things that I couldn't control. You just had to let go. But for me, it was like that, and changing, going to exercising 5 days a week, which I never really did. I would just go and play outside or go on a horse or go do things. And I never really looked at it as, no, your body needs this. You need to put these minerals and vitamins and things in that you've neglected to do. Funny though, never drank in my life. So kind of interesting that I had kidney cancer. Anyway, yeah, so now just recently, after 7 CAT scans, after surgeries, I'm able to, I had another surgery last year, and I'm able to just slow down. We haven't seen any progression, any metastatic disease. So I'm just now, and then COVID hits, but you know, so yeah, but for me, just recently have I been able to, in the mess of it all, you do want to take time and be in the now as well. So it's a very difficult time, as we all know, but we're all survivors.
And Salima, you know, two teenage daughters. What's that conversation like? When do you have it? I mean, what is it like?
You know, it was really tough for me, because when my second daughter was born, they had retained placenta, and I got E. coli septic shock and went into a coma.
Wow.
Yeah, and we had all that mess for a few years, and that was tough enough on our family. And then when this happened, I remember feeling like a burden, sadly, a little bit like, oh no, mom's got all these problems. Isn't terrible, but I'm just being candid and honest.
Yes, that's the point of this show.
It's so sad that I had to share this with them, that mom, and at the time, I didn't know if it was metastatic, and I didn't know anything, because I had to tell them I was going into major surgery and whatnot. It was very difficult. Every night I cook dinner, and you know, every night, 98% of the days I cook dinner, and and I make it very important that all of us share. You would think I was Italian in a background, but I'm not. You know, like everybody eat. But anyway, and that's when we share our days, and that's when I told them it was quite, especially on my youngest. She was 16 at the time, and took it the hardest, and just had the hardest time.
For the kids around us, you know, it's just so there's such an uncertainty, because it almost hits them, it strikes them that, you know, their parents are going to live forever. You know, the kids don't think about death the way adults think about death. I don't even think adults think about death until we're really faced with it in some significant way. But when kids kind of hear, I know even my 2 boys, you know, there's always like a little sense of, well, what did the doctor say? What is the doctor saying now? And they do take in so much more than we think. You know, these times for us shape them in ways that I think we underestimate. But we'll get back to that as well. Karen, I'm going to go to you, just because I'm going to do this segment as ladies first. So I'm going to go to you and ask you that same question in terms of, when did you start thinking about the new normal that you'd have to create in order to kind of step into a new life? Oh, I've got you on mute. So sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay. As you know, everybody's different in how they go through this journey. And my husband had just died, and then I went through treatment. The radiation and surgery meant I couldn't go back to being a physical therapist. And I had a year of treatment ending in surgery. And after that, I didn't have anything else. And, you know, you start to think after a while, well, maybe this is going to be okay. Because I think even now that I'm 9 years out, I still think, well, it could come back. You know, it's always in the back there somewhere. So I would say a year or 2 out, I started to realize that, you know, I had started actually after my treatment doing fundraising for my husband's cancer, and then a couple of years later for my cancer. And so I just kind of naturally morphed into finding my group in the cancer world. And I'm just kind of grown with what I do in the last few years. You know, as you probably talk about later, there are a lot of side effects to these treatments.
Yeah.
Those affect what you can do and can't do. So
Yeah, absolutely. Chaz, you're a guy who your story includes being this man's man, like how could I be sick? I'm taking care of myself. I'm fit, I'm military, I'm regimented, I eat right, I exercise, all of those things happen. And then it's like, you have cancer, those unavoidable words, you have cancer. So, going through that and then coming out on the other side and realizing that you now have lived through something, you've got to start building those blocks again so that you can live abundantly for what you have next. Talk to us a little bit about that experience.
So I had a hard time with processing because the only time I ever talked to my doctors about anything that was wrong with me was when they needed advice from me on their fitness. So just to give you some context, I've been a professional fitness trainer and coach for going on 25 years now. And a lot of my clients were, very well off professionals, in Orange County, California, where I resided, where my kids were born, and then here in San Diego County. So my conversations were more me being a consultant with them, and I go in for my annual checkup. That's it. But on my 45th birthday in April of 2013, that changed. I go in there and I started asking some questions. We'll talk about this later, I'm sure, about advocacy for oneself and also, for others. I basically said, look, I made a deal with myself back when I was in the military that I'm always getting physical. Now that I'm in my 40s, there are some things going, I'm just not sure. Do you mind what test should I be taking? He just kind of looked at me. He was like, get the frick out of my office, dude. You're like 190 pounds and less than 10% body fat. You're wasting my time, is essentially what he said. I said, no, doc, seriously. His name was Dr. Rodgers. I said, look, I know that the outside looks great. I get that.
Yeah.
I'm only concerned because I had a father who had like a heart attack. He was a former NFL running back in his youth. And there was all this kind of stuff. So I just need to know. I don't know a lot about, as an African-American man, I don't know enough about my other side of my family's history. So I'm asking this as a friend. He said, all right, fine, we'll do the DRE, which is the digital rectal exam, prostate cancer that I have. So, okay, so we do that. He says, he calls me back about 48 hours later. He says, no, I need you to come to the office. I was like, for what? He says, I can't tell you this over the phone. I said, look, doc, I don't have time for this. He says, I need you to come back in. All right, fine. So I go back into the office. He said, look, we did that DRE, and I think I might have felt a polyp or something, and I want you to go get a PSA. First time I've ever heard that acronym, ever, in my entire life. Okay. So I go get this blood test, and PSA is just a, pathogen, something, antigen test. Test blood level. Cool, go get it. Literally 72 hours later, his assistant called me on my personal phone. Look, Dr. Rex wants you to come back in, stat. He really needs to talk to you. I said, look, I got to go get the kids somewhere. That says, can you reschedule that or get somebody to do it, the nanny or something? I was like, yeah, I guess. So I raced back there. We have the sit down, and you guys all know what the sit down is. It's that look a doctor gives you when he knows or she knows they got to give you news you really ain't ready to hear. Essentially, he showed me the numbers and kind of explained to me what a Gleason score was and all these different things, all this medical mumbo jumbo that I understand today because I've been advocating for 7 years. But at that time, I was scared out of my, I really didn't know. So fast forward to time for surgery and et cetera, I said, you know what I do for a living. How come I don't know about this? And he says, because it's not something that physicians actually talk to men about unless it's there. Now you're going to get prostate and enlarged prostate at some point in your life if you live long enough, but not, they said, I think it was like 8 out of 10 times it will not become cancer. I said, well, how does that help me? Doc, I'm 45.
Right.
I got 3 kids under 10 years old. I'm running a full-time fitness business here. You serious? He's like, yeah. So then I had to go do, get opinions and everything like that. So the hardest part about that was, and I have a spouse that's in healthcare. And so when I kind of told her, she was like, ugh, because she knows the outcomes of some of these cancers. And she herself had a father who passed away from this cancer at 66 years of age. So kind of freaked her out. Of course, now I'm freaked out. You know, that was a sitting in the car, trying to catch my breath. That was probably I've had a lot of crying episodes over 7 years, but that was probably the biggest one because it's like, okay, now there's this unknown about what's going to happen with this process. Now, here's the good news about that. Thankfully, we worked hard enough where I had enough money, income, resources. I had some of the best healthcare, you know, access long before the ACH that you could possibly have. And I'm not even talking about my Navy experience and using my veteran benefits, just as a civilian. So I was very lucky in that regard. And I had an innovative team that said, look, once we know this, here's what you need to do. And that's kind of what happened with that. But the pressure from that moment, and I still reflect on that. I don't know if you guys are like that, but I still go back to that day when I first was told. And every year on my birthday, you know, I celebrate this. And man, I gotta tell you, it was like somebody took a big cinder block. I actually used the Mike Tyson analogy. Mike Tyson's walking down the street, and he just walks up and just shacks you up with a body shot.
Yeah, it's like you didn't do anything. You know, you didn't even enter the ring. You didn't put your
I wasn't even a contender. I was just there, you know, sitting ringside watching the fight.
Right. So Chaz, when did you feel like, okay, I've got to rebuild? I mean, you go through all of your, you know, when do you turn that corner from kind of fighting with the disease to saying, okay, now I'm going to build this new life?
That's a great question. One of my challenges, unlike, you know, Karen, you kind of said this because you're in physical therapy. I was a full-time fitness trainer with a background in geriatric fitness, sports conditioning, athletic coaching, and youth fitness. And I was very physical in my job. I mean, I did a lot of demonstrating of the movements and lifting the weights and moving stuff and yelling and screaming and et cetera. So man, that was tough because I had to figure out, you know, what was next. And when you're so hands-on practically as a practitioner in fitness, that's not easy. And so it took me a minute. I mean, it really did. I mean, from the time I left Orange County to come into San Diego, and, you know, I'm an Aries, so I'm like, I'm going to do it. Well, guess what? That didn't work out too well because, one, when you're dealing with people that don't know anything about what you've been through, they don't have the same mindset. You talk about my military background, so I was mission focused and complained second. What's my mission? I got to get back to work. I got to keep my mind off of this. And so I would go back in, I took some positions with companies, and it didn't work out, partly because I had a different focus.
Yeah.
So I took some time off, much like Salima just said. I took about 3 years, just kind of went on a sabbatical and shut down everything, you know, as far as being a trader and all that. I just had to let go because I think what it was what defined me back when I first started my life, my family. What defined me does not define me.
Yes.
It's just not who I am. And I used to think that's who I was, and I'm not that guy anymore.
Right.
And that's what I needed to. That took some. I can tell you guys this right now. That took me up until just last year.
Wow.
To make a decision that I don't have to lift all the weights.
Right.
I don't have to train all the clients. It doesn't have to be me anymore. That was probably the hardest thing, the hardest lesson I learned about this cancer and this diagnosis and changing the way I do this paradigm shift is exactly that. I don't have to be the guy.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, it's funny because, you know, as Randy was telling us just about him, you know, personally, what he's doing these days, it kind of feels the same thing. You know, here, Randy, you're in this, you know, high power position. You've built your company. You're servicing one of the biggest brands on the planet, never mind in the US. You know, you've got your team, you've got your family. It's like everything is so tidy, and you think about the same way Chaz was talking about. Mike Tyson comes and kind of punches you when you're not even in the ring. What you don't think about that, you know, when any of us are building our 5-year plan, or we're thinking about what we want to have in our life or how we want to build, you don't think that there's going to be, you know, month 8 and quarter 4 where you're going to be given a diagnosis and it's going to derail all of this that you worked on. So Randy, you know, you talked a little bit about that pivot point in being that executive to taking the time you needed. and kind of, I love that you pulled your family all together and said, well, if it's good, you know, if the days are numbered, we're going to do this together. So once you kind of came out of that and started moving into more patient advocacy, what was that turning point for you where you said, wait, I still have a lot of life left to live and I want to make it matter in what I leave, you know, doing with the world?
Well, I mean, it kind of, you know, it doesn't happen immediately, and it is a transition. And I would say, though, what did happen immediately, and I think this is probably true for just about anybody that hears those words, you have cancer, is your values completely change in a nanosecond. As you mentioned, I was running a business, and it was a successful small business. We were moving at the speed of light, not speed of sound. We were moving very, very quickly. I traveled all over the world. We did these large events for C-level customers for Microsoft. Nothing but, you know, 5-star everything. So that was my world, and I was all about building wealth. And you know, my kids were important; they were high in the list. But the day that I was told you have cancer, my value tree flipped. My kids became absolutely priority number one, and building wealth went down, you know, 15 notches.
Yeah.
And so that was, again, it's just, you know, you keep your kind of your core values, but they just get reprioritized so quickly. And that's exactly what happened with me. And then as I progressed, and as I, you know, found, you know, I realized, gee, I mean, as I believe Karen was talking earlier, you know, a little bit about, you know, every day you're kind of thinking, well, gee, is it going to come back or whatever? And I would say for the first 5 years, every time I went to the oncologist, you know, I was, you know, they have a term called scanxiety. You go in and get your scans and you wait to hear what that's, and you're kind of sitting on the edge of the bed and you think, okay, this probably is the time where you're going to tell me it's back. Well, that didn't happen. And, but it's in the back of your mind all the time. And as time goes by, it becomes less prevalent, at least for me. And as I developed this, as I started to really think about it, and I'm kind of a lightning cancer rod. I mean, anybody that knows me, that knows anybody that gets cancer, I get a phone call or a text or an email, and I never say no to anybody. And I'm cancer agnostic. Doesn't matter which cancer. If somebody gets cancer, it's cancer, and it's obviously life-changing. So I don't chase people down to do advocacy work for so much, but I do. Anybody that contacts me, I will do whatever I can to try to help them through this. I do that primarily. I mean, I get a great sense of satisfaction from that. I feel it gives me great purpose. And it's because I have lived as long as I have, and I have been through so many of these different things, and especially the emotional trail, that I can explore that with them and help them. Probably most in that regard is, you know, in addition to finding the right doctors and knowing what questions to ask and where to go, et cetera, et cetera. But the emotional trail is, like I say, probably one of the more, and I get great gratification from that. I feel it gives me purpose. I believe that God kept me alive for a reason, and this is my way of giving something back. And so I get a lot out of that.
That's amazing. You know, Randy, your story, I was saying to the group before you joined, your story when you introduced the notion of, because the first doctor you saw is not the doctor that ended up being your doctor. And last night I was doing a interview for advocacy for survivorship with a leader in developing survivorship programs. She comes from the University of Kansas, phenomenal woman. Anyway, and I said, you know, there was this patient who kind of opened my eyes to the fact that when you're either pre-diagnosed with anything, pre-diagnosed, then diagnosed, and then planning your treatment, you as a human are in the most vulnerable place because you can't fix it. You can't figure it out on your own. You have to almost put your trust in somebody else, and the trust is your life. Like everything you're made of, you're putting this trust in with somebody else, and you're saying, can you help me? You know, can you help me be my sidekick in this fight for my life or my freedom or my heart or whatever it is that patients are fighting for. And Randy, you had said that you went to this doctor and it was like the doctor was very flippant and was answering phone calls from his wife about going to the grocery store and picking things up. And meantime, you're like sitting there with the energy of, guy, look at me, like you gotta be helping me, I have cancer. And you said something that changed. I mean, I've worked with doctors. My dad's a doctor. I worked with doctors my whole life. You said, I just decided to fire my doctor. And as you said it on the town hall, I thought, I wish I had another 5 minutes with this guy to go deeper with that concept. But I think it's so important, Randy, and it's worth spending a few minutes talking about. You are your biggest advocate in any given moment in a clinic, whether it's a walk-in clinic, whether it's the emergency room, whether it's your oncologist's office, your cardiologist, in my case, my rheumatologist. They're seeing hundreds of patients that week. You're only seeing them for this particular thing that's ailing you. So tell us about the decision, the courage, because you didn't think, I know you weren't thinking of it as a courageous act, but it is courageous to say, no, this isn't the person that's going to be working with me on this. Tell the audience, how do you come to that decision and that it's okay to come to that decision?
Well, and like I say, you have to look at it in a lot of different, from the perspective of you could think of it as, you know, that this is a business decision that you're making. You know, it's your life, but you're sitting here and you're interviewing these people and you're determining how they're going to treat you based upon what they're saying. And so, and fortunately for me, this first group, and it wasn't just one, it was the whole team. I mean, typically when you're being treated for cancer, it's a team. You've got surgeons, you've got oncologists, you know, you've got specialists, et cetera. You got a nurse, you've got nurse practitioners, et cetera, et cetera. So I was diagnosed by a pulmonologist, and he was the one that told me that I needed to go see an oncologist. But before he did, he was the one that told me, you have cancer, and you know, reached over, shook my hand and said, good luck, I've got a tea time in an hour, have fun, basically. And so that was strike one. And then I met the oncologist, and he spent 5 minutes standing in front of me, you know, in the waiting room, telling me how he was going to open me up, remove this, remove that, go on chemo, get another round of chemo, have radiation, and then shook my hand and said, good luck. You know, I want you to go see the surgeon. And that's when I saw the surgeon, and the surgeon, like I say, took a few phone calls while he was telling me how he was going to resect my lung. And so it was like strike three. It was like, it wasn't just like that. It was a culmination of these things that I realized, okay, I'm being told a message here, and I better be listening to what's going on. Mm-hmm. So that's when I decided, okay, I'm done. I'm out of here. I have to actually go physically shop and find a team, because this one wasn't going to work for me. So that's what happened. But again, and thank goodness that they were that unprofessional, for lack of a better word,
Yeah.
because had I stayed the course, I can almost guarantee you, you'd be having a different patient on the Zoom meeting right now. It's that important.
Moretti, when you told that story, I know that it resonated with so many people that wait in the waiting room up to, I've been told, up to 2 hours for their doctor, that then, you know, they go in and the nurse practitioner or the PA comes in and says, so sorry, the doctor was called to do something else. You know, I'll see you for 3 minutes. And just the feeling, and when it's a pattern, you know, things happen, one-off, things happen. But when it's a pattern where you don't feel that the person who's fighting for you is honoring the fight that you're going through in that moment, I'm telling you, you changed my perspective. And I know you changed so many others' perspective on this. I want to cover so much. We've got about 20 more minutes left, so I want to make sure that we cover as much as we can. Meredith, you know, you in your introduction, you talked about that you do therapy and talk therapy and things like that. This might be, you know, we're moving into maybe some hard places, but anybody going through a diagnosis that they feel it. You know, Salima was just talking about like those moments where it's like, it could be that you're in the middle of doing something normal and natural, and you're silently in your soul and in your mind, you're praying that someone can just take this away from you. Like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to be here. I didn't sign up for this. I don't know how I'm going to get through this. Maybe I'm not strong enough, you know, whatever the things might be. How do you process that? Like as a patient and as a survivor, how do you process that this wasn't an invited guest disease? This disease wasn't an invited guest, but it's here, and it's here to stay, not necessarily in the phase, you know, in this chemo, surgery, radiation phase, but it's here to stay. I mean, thinking about Karen and everybody on this panel, it's always in the back of your mind. You know, what is that? What's that lump? What's that feeling in my belly? What's that pain in my side? It's always there. How do you process that?
I think for me personally, it took a really, really long time. And I went through my own therapy to help me work through it because I had to. And I think that one of the things that I learned in the process of working through it was that I was not defined by my illness, and that it's a part of me and it will always be a part of me. And it's not necessarily anything that I think is, you know, incredibly negative. It's been painful, it's been challenging, it's been like unbelievable sometimes, but knowing for myself that I am not defined or identified as a sick person.
Yes.
And that it's a component of my life, and it's a component that I live with and that I will live with. And so once I started to really embrace that and own that, then I kind of, in my journey, had shifted from, okay, I'm a cancer patient, to I'm a cancer survivor, to I'm a person who's thriving and I live with this illness.
Yes.
And so, you know, kind of shifting the mindset and how you interpret what it is. Because I can, you know, for myself, and I think for a lot of people who have cancer or have had cancer, you know, you don't ever really hear anyone say like, well, actually, maybe you do. I could be totally wrong about that. But I was going to say, you know, a lot of people say they wouldn't change it. They wouldn't take it back. They wouldn't do anything differently because of the lessons that have been learned and because of the positive changes in perspective and values and these things that we've been talking about, and just how you think about the world, yourself, and yourself in the world with other people.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, it's a lot of really challenging, hard work.
Meredith, does it color everything? Like after life after cancer, does it color everything, that new perspective of, you know, temporary, of survival, of fighting? Does it color all the future experiences, or do you find yourself in places where you forget that was a part of your life?
There are moments where I forget, and it took a lot of years for that to happen. A lot of years, at least a decade, because I know that just with the graft versus host disease and the fluctuations with that, there's always some kind of pain, or there's always some kind of something that's happening. And so it is there. And I remember having a conversation, I think with my dad once, where I said to him, I said, you know, I don't remember what it's like to not have pain. I don't remember what that feels like anymore, because it's been such a long time. But at the same time, while I'm existing with this, it's kind of at this point sort of like, I don't know, like an annoying, I hate to say this, but like an annoying sibling. It's just kind of there, you know? It's just like, okay, there's that. Okay, whatever. Anyway, you know, and so it's just like, you deal with it. But there are moments where I am able to forget, and those are really lovely moments.
Yeah.
But I don't want to entirely forget.
Yes, yes. No, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think it does make sense, you know, the annoying sibling. It's like, they're there, they're part of you, you have to learn to live around them, you know, like, I think that definitely too is a good analogy about it. Karen, I'm gonna talk to you a little bit about, you know, you lost your husband, you then have your diagnosis, you go through all of the, you know, stages of treatment that you have to. You've got a strong family unit, you know, people are around you, which I think is so beautiful for people to have and to experience. And I know that that's one of the things that COVID-19 has stolen from a lot of people, that, you know, you can't even go in with a person, a buddy, a sister, a mom, anybody for your chemotherapy visits anymore. So I know that that is a major theme of what we've lost in this pandemic. And now, you know, you're kind of rethinking life and rethinking what do you do next. And I love that your answer is, well, of course it's advocacy. Of course it's, you know, being a voice to people who need a voice at the time where, you know, they feel most vulnerable. And I really love that a huge part of what you're doing involves research, because you know, that's not top of mind. And even today, so many years past, when we've put in tight regulations to control the research environment, people still use words like guinea pig. And it's not that in any way. So, you know, I want you to share from your heart about how you were led into specifically becoming that advocate for clinical research, and what you want to say to patients out there at any step of their journey in terms of finding and investigating whether or not they're a good candidate for a research study.
Well, you know, things grow one on top of the other, and you just kind of end up at another place. And mine started with the fundraising. Then I needed some, because my husband had died, I really couldn't put much burden on my 3 children. And I did have friends that helped me a lot, but I needed somebody a group that could support me. So that started with the support group. And it just kind of blossomed out. I have always liked science, so of course I went towards the research. I do patient advocacy also, but research is what I really enjoy and spend probably most of my time doing. And I think what I would say to people that are thinking, well, you don't even have to be, like I was stage 4, so you do start thinking about being in clinical trials, and I was actually in one. So I've learned a lot from that. It was a failure, but that helped them to move on to things that are now being approved. But I think patients, I was a deer in the headlight too, especially without my husband there. And I think if you can, either you or somebody who can support you can help you find out so that you can be proactive. The whole idea about firing your doctor, get a second opinion and know, in colorectal cancer, what they talk to you about all the time is know your biomarkers, because it's different treatments and it's different trials. I also help curate trials for colorectal cancer. And so we're in the process of being able to help people find trials because it's not all that easy to do. But, that could be the thing that saves you.
Yeah.
Especially if you're a stage 4 patient.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I think, as Meredith said, we can't speak for everybody, but when you do get to the point where you say, I wouldn't want to trade this, it's because you've learned something from the diagnosis and from the journey that other people haven't learned that give you something special, like thinking of Randy taking his kids out of school. I mean, when COVID hit and my kids started being here, the first week I was like, oh my gosh. And then collectively, the world had their kids with them. So it became like week 2, week 3, week 4, you would see, you're on the phone with vice president of marketing somewhere and their little one pops in over here on the video. And you're like, oh, it's okay for the dog to be barking or the little one to be asking you questions. And then I think the turning point for me for something that was like special that's come out of an experience is when one day my 6-year-old came and he said, he came in so confident. He goes, Mommy, I know you're going to be excited about this. And it was noon. And I said, what is it? And he said, I set up Go Fish for us on the dining room table. And everyone, I couldn't say no. I couldn't say no. I had a 12:30 call. I had something I couldn't say no. And I went out. I will always remember it. I went out thinking, oh, I gotta rush this. We must have played 15 games of Go Fish. Yeah. I missed 3 more calls. I didn't get anything else done. And it was a magical moment because I thought to myself, who cares about all of that stuff that I missed? So when I hear, Randy was like, all right, let's pull the kids out of school. We're going traveling. It's something so special that you get from this diagnosis that he would not have gotten. Maybe he would have had that big bank account and at his funeral that he died of something else, his kids would have been like, my dad was really good at saving money and he gave us a good life, but they wouldn't have had the memories that they made along the way. So it definitely does bring you, that kind of sense of power. It gives you something. And so I truly believe too that, as all of you have kind of moved into the world of advocacy in your own ways, you're gifting so many people that permission to look at what it's given you. So I love that. Salima, you mentioned at the top of the interview that you started focusing on what you put in your body and what you put on your body. And I just want to stop there because I was watching, I think it was like Dr. Stephen Gundry or something, and he was talking about, it was some like some telemercial, whatever, infomercial. And he was talking about, when his patients come in and they say, what can I do? And he said something like, well, if you had asked me that when you were 10, I would have been able to help you change the course of your life. But now that you're, 40, you can reduce this, whatever. But I love that what this did for you was kind of give you a new type of control in your life where you said, it does matter what I eat. It does matter what I wear, what I put on my skin, how I take care of myself, self-care. It does matter that I look at exercise, and I know that resonated with Chaz. I look at exercise as not just a routine, but part of taking care of this temple, you know, like this is the only body I'm going to get. So I want to make sure that I honor it with my time in saying I'm going to put that first. Do you feel that that's something that's going to stay with you? Is that something that now you promote to your girls and to the people around you in terms of care?
Teenage girls to, you know, eat whole wheat pizza or cauliflower pizza, but, you know, but yes, 150%. You know, when this happened, I was always, rewind back, took care of animals my whole life, took care of children, took care of people. I was often, my volunteer roles at the hospital, taking care of patients, like always took care of everyone else. I don't know if that's a burden. I think partly a bit of us women have that, you know, we're caregivers often. Sorry, Chaz and Randy, but you know, we are, we, you know, we birth and whatnot. But anyway, having always given to others, I, you know, rarely looked inward in that way. And when I realized, especially after I left the hospital with this diagnosis and this surgery, and no doctor there, I said, you've got to give me something. Is there something I can read, or what can I learn? And literally the doctor said, go home.
Yeah.
And I found myself while I was healing through surgeries to just do as much research as I could, and saw, well, if food can harm you, it can help you. If this hurts you, it can help you. If this can do this, and I thought the yin and yang, the black and white, the this and that, there's pendulum swinging here going, and I'm going to do my very best. Just like I don't know, Chaz, I'm guessing that super strenuous exercise can also be difficult in the body, that, you know, I did the research and I saw that, oh my gosh, here I thought this whole time, here I'm making homemade organic meals, but I'm cooking them with white flour, white sugar. I wasn't being mindful in that way of what could possibly be not causing cancer, but giving its way, helping it grow, or possibly not helping it, helping my body grow. So I thought, I'm going to make these changes. And one of them, I saw Dr. William Lee talk about eat to beat disease, and about angiogenesis and anti-angiogenesis, and how exercising and what we eat and everything, the chemicals, the parabens, the things that are in our makeup as women and are in our hair products, these things are important. They've caused, they found them in breast cancer tissue. This, I don't think I could ever, as much as I want a really good pepperoni New York pizza, I really do. I have dreams about it. Maybe one day soon I'll just totally have a bite, but no, I don't think so. I've been able to, I've learned so much. I grow my own bacteria for sourdough. You know, yeah. So I've learned a lot, and I couldn't, the way I feel, and have come, you know, I make these horrific, and I say they're horrific. My husband he just, you know, he's such a trooper. He chokes them down with me, and they're like raw broccoli and Brussels sprouts, and, you know, the grossest of difficultness. It's like applesauce, just chugging it down, but it's so good for you, right? And
I think to your point, it doesn't even matter. You know, you've done such significant things, but even small steps, even people who just say, you know what, every day I'm going to take a 10-minute walk, which incorporates being outside, which incorporates moving your body, getting your heart going a little bit. You want to be longer. You want to do it longer. 10 minutes turns into 15 to 20 to 30. And you get on the phone, you know, you put your earphones in, or you walk with your husband or your friend. Now it's like the time's passing so quickly, you're not even thinking that you're exercising. So I think that it's important that while there are people that have the ability to, like you, I wish, check all the ingredients and do everything right, even small things are just treats. They're gifts to yourself.
You know, walk out in the sun, you know,
Yes.
at the
Yes, the power of, yes.
So therapeutic. So anything.
Yes. No, absolutely. Thank you for that. Chaz, I'm gonna put you on the spot, as I feel like I've known you forever, and I haven't, but every time I'm 2 for 2, I put you on the spot. On the last town hall, I told him, you know, look into the camera and talk to men and be like, men, go get your stuff checked out. But this time I'm going to put you on the spot too. And I'm going to put you on the spot without trying to get political, because I'm not trying to get political, but it's real. It's the world we're living in, and it's real. So I think we've got to say it. People of color aren't given the same level of access. Maybe that is a pendulum too. Some people of color are, most people of color aren't. I do want you to talk to those listeners right now that are saying, yeah, it's great, that's great, everything that you guys are all saying is great. Fire your doctor, eat all these healthy foods, you know, go see a therapist even. Yeah, spend all that time with all of those family members. That's not real for everybody.
No, it's not.
So, I mean, again, putting you on the spot, I'm putting you on the spot because I think you have a platform, and I want you to use it to kind of speak out to people to say, well, what can you do? What should you do right now?
Here's the challenge. Here's the challenge for people of African American descent, people of brown descent, Latino or Hispanic, even folks of Asian descent. We all have different. Listen, you get onto the express lane, some people get in the middle, some people get to the right, some people get to the left, depends on how fast you're going to go. And the express lane of wellness has been a challenge, especially for folks of African American descent. I can speak to that wholeheartedly because I had a grandmother who died from diabetes, double-leg amputee, but most of the issues that she had were self-induced. Didn't want to go to the doctor, ate terribly. My grandmother had a garden in the backyard as a kid growing up. But that garden turned into fried food in the kitchen. I mean, it just wasn't. It wasn't like Salima was saying. It just wasn't done right. Grease from the oven, that kind of stuff. So why did I mention that? So what's happened especially for Black men when it comes to prostate cancer. So 1 in 9 men will get the disease. 1 in 7 more than likely will be a veteran of the military services. 1 in 5 will be African American.
Wow.
I didn't know that when I was diagnosed, and it pissed me off for 2 reasons. One,
so that's 20%. 20% will be African American.
Yeah. So think about that for a second. So here you are, you're a fitness guy. I know Black guys that are doctors. Not worried about this disease to me. Not ever. We talk about diabetes. We talk about heart disease or heart attacks because we're known for that, hypertension, etc. You also got to remember that the fear of Blacks, especially men, when it comes to dealing with physicians, is real.
Yeah.
There was a couple of research things done that were less than favorable for my people. That's just a fact. And that's an issue in and of itself. But here's the thing, you talk about COVID-19, and the death rate for COVID-19 is higher amongst African Americans and Browns for a couple of different reasons. Access is number one. Even if they did get access, what kind of access are they getting? To Randy's point, what kind of access are you getting? Because you really don't know. It's a guy in a white jacket. He looks like a doctor, but is he your doctor? And even if he is your doctor, does he have your best interest at heart? Or is he just checking the box? Yeah, I saw patient number 3 for 5 minutes. I saw patient number 23 for 5 minutes. You get where I'm going with this. And it's 2 or 3 minute interactions, and you really didn't learn anything about that patient, especially that patient's back history on their health, especially when it comes to being Black in this country. So that's a challenge. The second problem is, even if you do have that access, what does that look like? So I've seen it from both sides. I have family members that are not well off, and their healthcare experience has not been great. And my healthcare experiences have been, the Bentley of service.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that fair? I don't know. Did it help me? 1,000%. Because I was able to ask questions and push the initiative and get things done as an advocate for myself, which is very important. But when I go out and I speak and I advocate, because I do advocacy as well, when I go out and I speak to men of color in churches, on the basketball court, or wherever, I go where they are. And that's the other side of access when it comes to healthcare. When the ACH was created, one of the primary purposes, and it's in the bylaws when they wrote this, was to give access to men of color and women of color who were not getting fair treatment or access to the type of physicians that could, in Randy's case, save their life.
Yeah.
They were just getting brushed off to the side. They might get in a clinical trial, but they never saw the clinical trial all the way through to its end, or never even got on it because they were disqualified, partly because they couldn't even get to the place.
Yeah.
Karen knows what I'm talking about. They do a clinical trial and it's 100 miles from where you can go.
Yeah.
Black folks can't do that. That's a fact. That lady's gonna get on a bus for what, 3 hours to get to a clinical trial for 30 minutes and then go back? It doesn't make any sense. So it's unfair in that respect. And so what we have to do better as a nation, as far as when it comes to healthcare, is there has to be accessible capability. Now telehealth, let me caveat this. Telehealth has helped some,
Yeah. Yes.
some folks. That is true. But there are still a lot of people who don't have this type of technology out there. Even if they have a phone, they don't know how to use it. And it's sad.
What would you say to someone, if you could only say one thing, what would you say to normalize or to kind of regulate, give them the opportunity to almost like take control and be empowered? What would you say at your next visit? Ask this, or make sure you have a visit. Like, what would you say to people?
3 things. First thing is go prepared. Go prepared. Whatever you can do to prepare, go prepared. Even the dumbest question you can think of, that dumb question needs to be asked. If you put it out in the universe, you're going to get an answer. Even if you don't have to worry about that. Hey, if you didn't ask the question, you don't know if you didn't have to worry about that. So go prepared. That's number 1. Number 2, have an advocate with you. Somebody that you trust, a friend, a buddy, a wife, a husband, a boyfriend, a girlfriend, I don't care who it is. Somebody who would go, hey, but wait a minute, can I ask you a question? Right? That, you know, the old Animal House movie with the thing on your shoulder.
Yes.
Ask them. You need somebody, because what that does is it forces you, because remember, we're all patients here. We're survivors. We're emotional.
Yeah.
Emotional wreck. We may not even remember, right? We may not even remember to ask the one question we probably should have asked, we didn't remember to ask.
Right.
Number 3, and most important, it's got to be about you. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where you are in your treatment, diagnosis, or what have you. When you go in, it's got to, what am I going to do for me? You got to have that mindset, and nobody can give you that. That's it. No one can give you that. That's got to come from you. Somewhere within our, physiological and ideological makeup, we are survivors, period. So when you ask something, you're asking it for you. That will help other people, but you're asking for yourself. So I would go in with those 3 tools.
Yes, I love that, and I think that those are 3 practical things. And go. I mean, my mom is Indian. My father was white from England. My mom, she's a nurse. She goes to the doctor like once every 3 years. Go to the doctor. My mom is Caribbean Indian. So for them, it's like the hospital doctors, it's like, no. Only sick people go there, and you go there to get sick. And it's like, that's like 1930s. Mom, go to the doctor.
Yeah.
So go. Right?
Coffee.
Yes. Okay, so we're down to the end. I always think these things go so fast. I mean, it's just unbelievable. It's like an hour goes so fast. I do want to ask everybody to give a message. The most important thing you learned through this, to this moment, because you're going to learn so many more important things, but the most important thing you learned that you would say to someone who's just starting. I'd like everybody to just go there. So I'm going to start, Meredith, with you.
I think that one, like just with all of these things that we've been talking about, you're absolutely worth it. You're worth the investment, you're worth the time, you're worth the energy. That absolutely 100%. Second thing is that even if you think you can't get through the moment, you can. And so it's just a matter of taking it one step at a time. You'll get there, you'll get to the other side, because sometimes it's hard to see that. But I think those things, you're worth it. You can get there, you can do it, you're strong. And embrace life, really. Like that's truly what it's about.
I love that. I love that. And I thank you on behalf of everybody that just heard you say that. I really do. I know there are people that needed to hear that. Karen, I'm going to ask you the same question. One thing you'd tell someone.
Well, I will quickly tell you 3 things that I just thought of. You are your own best advocate, so be sure to advocate for yourself. Be sure and ask questions. Ask questions, ask questions. No, like Chaz said, no question is a dumb question. And the biggest one for me is each day is a gift. Don't forget that.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you for that. Salima, I'm going to go to you.
I think mine would be more mindset. Have gratitude. It's you fall in that victim mentality and just, oh, poor me. Wake up and thank you for the sunlight today. Thank you for the smell of this rose today. Thank you for my family, for this day. Thank you for this day. Try to stay in the moment. It's hard to do this, but not over here, just right here.
Yes. I interviewed a psychologist a couple weeks ago, and she said, she was same thing, Salima. She said, gratitude, that's the key, gratitude. And she said, don't say general things. Don't say thank you for my kids. Thank you that my teenager keeps me on my toes when he tries to finagle going to meet his friends. That my little 6-year-old wants to spend obnoxious amounts of time with me because one day he won't. Like all of those things, get granular. In your gratitude list, get granular, because that means you've contextualized it to you. You've individualized it to you. And I loved that she said that. That was something that I took away. So thank you for that. Yes, have gratitude. I love that. That's beautiful. Randy, how about you?
Live in the now.
That's hard.
It's really one of the things that probably one of the most cathartic things I did following my treatment. When I was, as I mentioned earlier, I was told I did not have very long to live. And because I had been running this business and traveling around and, there were just certain things that my kids at the time, they were early teenagers, that didn't know a lot of things that I had done or what I believed in, or et cetera, to the level that I thought that they should. So I sat down and I wrote a book. And I titled it, It's an Extraordinary Life, Don't Miss It. And one of the hallmark chapters in it is about a day that it was a snow day, that the kids weren't in school. They were 6 or 7 years old. And I ended up working from home, and I was working and I missed out on being out playing with them and the dog and everybody, sledding, because I decided to work.
Yeah.
And I can tell you that had I had cancer that day, I would not have known anything on my desk mattered whatsoever. I would have been out there the whole time with those kids.
Yeah. What a beautiful sentiment. Absolutely.
So,
And for the listening audience, it doesn't take cancer. It just takes being mindful. Salima talked about being mindful in what we put on our bodies and in our bodies. Be mindful of time. There's a biblical reference that says, teach me to number my days. Like, be mindful that we don't have an unlimited number of days, and that you can break and go and play 20 hands of Go Fish with your 6-year-old, or get on a sled when there's a bunch of work on your desk. It doesn't take cancer. Let this opportunity be the thing that's the catalyst to make you be mindful and create those moments of gratitude for making choices that matter for the rest of your life. And frankly, for the rest of the life of the person who's experiencing with you, whatever it is you're doing. All right, brother, I'm ending with you. Chaz, what is your takeaway?
So I have a saying, in my fitness business. I used to get grief about it all the time. People would call in, they would hear it. And one of my best friends, I love this guy. He's pretty much a brother to me, a guy named Michael Fawn. He'll appreciate this because every time he would call me and hang up, he would say, "Hey, do something fit today." And so when I was going through the early parts of my cancer, and I was talking to other people, and I had a guy call me about a month ago, as part of the story to tell you about, kind of in this, you know, we met in DC at a Zero Cancer Summit, and he had not yet gone through any treatments or anything. He was freaking out about all of it. And he called me just about 72 hours ago to tell me he just had his surgery. He was 30 days past having the surgery, and he was just in shock. And he said, you know, there were 2 people I wanted to call, and you were one of them.
Oh.
It was huge because we just talked about it. And I said, you got to deal with this today. I told him this back in February. Just do it. Do not sit there. And basically what I said was, look, man, you got to check your pride. You have to. Check your pride and go do what these people are telling you if you want to live.
Yeah.
I tell people all the time, it's 2 choices, man. It really is 2 choices. Live, die. Choose.
Yes.
That's it. All the rest of it you'll learn about, you'll get through all the stories, you'll get through all that, but you got 2 choices, man. Live, die, choose. And from that, he called me. He said, I wouldn't have done it without you.
Oh, that's a beautiful story.
Right.
Thank you for sharing that story, Chaz. You know, all of you, thank you for sharing your time with us. Thank you for sharing your stories with us. Thank you for sharing your life with us. I mean, this culminates so much of a journey that is, you know, day by day, moment by moment, decision by decision. And it has brought you all to this moment where you can speak about it to people who are going through it in their own ways, and you can make a mark on them. And I know that you all have. You each made a mark on me, enough for me to want to get you all back in a room to spend an hour with each other. Stay in touch with me. I will do my best to stay in touch with you, especially through COVID connections, so important. And I'm so honored to know each and every one of you and to be able to kind of pass through this journey together with you. So I thank you for your time tonight. And I wish you all health and love and prosperity until we can meet in person.
Thank you.
You.
Thank you. Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, everybody.
You all. Take care.